Hi, I'm Caitlin, and this is Book Chats, and it's time again to unwrap books on my shelf. So I always start with a little overview of the books that I was supposed to read last month and the progress I've made, and then I take rings off my chain, and then we figure out what I'm going to unwrap. So I wrote myself a little post-it because you should be proud of me. This month I actually got rid of some books before I filmed this. So the first book that I read this month that was on my list was A List of Cages by Robin Rowe. I actually did not read this edition of it because I happened to have it out from the library because I had to read it for the Young Adult BookTube Awards. It was nominated in the debut category, and there should be information about who won going up very soon. So I read the finished copy because finished copies are always better to read if they have already come out. I am counting that as having read this. And so I was really proud of myself. I was really happy and surprised to have unwrapped this, and then I was really proud of myself for reading it right away in the month. And then the month went on, and I'm just gonna say right now, I only finished 6 books in the month of January, and most of them were not off this list. So I got really creative because I know that I have to get like 8 of these rings off to unwrap what I need to. So yeah, this one is done though. I read it. Thoughts on it? The writing was really well done. It was really like smooth. It went very kind of smoothly. So it took me a while to realize that the plot is really like a very special episode of Degrassi. I think the author would have been more effective if she hadn't gone so far in what happens. So I'm gonna rip a ring off for that one. And then the second book that I'm counting, I'm fudging it a little bit, guys. Bear with me. So I read a book that actually was on like my audiobook TBR. So I had the audiobook on my phone and I needed to read it, and I did. And I'm like normally wouldn't necessarily count that because I didn't unwrap it, but I'm sort of counting as a half book. And then I'm going to count another book that I read this month on audiobook as like a half book because I know it's wrapped on this shelf somewhere. And so together I'm counting those two as a whole book. And those are Shadow Shaper by Daniel Jose Older and Gilead by Marilyn Robinson, I believe. Gilead I was supposed to read for my book club like a year ago, and I didn't. And I owned a copy, and then this year we chose like the sort of sequel or companion novel to that for a book club. So I read Gilead finally, and then I didn't actually finish the book we were supposed to read for book club, so sorry book club people. And then Shadow Shaper, I had the audiobook and I needed to read it, and so I got to it and I enjoyed it for the most part. You can read my full review on Goodreads if you want to know more about my opinion. The last book I'm going to talk about that I actually finished is one that I've been wanting to read for a long time, and I'm glad that I finally finished it, and that is The Art of Waiting by Belle Boggs. It's sort of an essay collection on, the author wrote essays like as she went through the IVF process and went through sort of assisted fertility. She basically explores fertility and assisted reproduction from almost every angle. Grey Wolf Press does a really good job. There we go, Grey Wolf Press. They're an indie publisher, and they do a lot of really good essay collections, and I think something they're good at in their essay collections is finding someone who has a very personal angle on something, but then is able to blow it out larger and see beyond their own personal experience, so they are able to see, they're able to tap into larger trends, or they're able to see kind of larger experiences that maybe aren't their personal experiences, and this book in many ways felt like that. Each single chapter focused on kind of a personal part of the experience that the author Belle Boggs had, but also she then like widened her lens and looked at other people who were experiencing similar things or different things, or she just did a really good job of getting beyond her personal experience, but also tying her personal experience in so you had a hook. And then I'm going to go through 2 books that I gave a brief chance and then didn't end up finishing. This one, Fall for Anything by Courtney Summers. It's an early Courtney Summers book, and I think maybe if I had unwrapped it at a different point in time, I would have maybe given it more of a chance. But I got about like 10 pages in, and then I was like, what is this about again? And I read the back, and I discovered that basically the plot is that the main character's father has recently committed suicide, and she's sort of trying to figure out why and what's going on, and like then like going through life right after that. And I immediately DNF'd it when I found that out because I have had 2 friends that I've lost to suicide in the last 6 months, and so I'm literally like every time I see suicide in something, I avoid it. Yeah, I just can't read something that has such a large theme, has decided such a large theme. So another time and another place maybe, but not today. And then Go Figure by Joe Edwards. I actually got about halfway through this, and then I just realized I didn't actually care about what was going to go on, partly because the character was making choices that I could just tell were going to end badly, and I was like starting to feel awkward on her behalf, and I was like, I don't have to read this. Like, I don't actually care. I briefly thought about skimming ahead and like seeing what happened, but I was like, I can kind of guess what's going to happen and I don't care. So the other thing is, it's interesting because I would be more interested in reading this if I knew someone had read it and sort of reviewed it in terms of, someone I know and trust had read it and reviewed it in terms of like fat phobia or a couple other things. Since I don't necessarily know that, I was like, well, I'll read it, and then like, what am I gonna tell people whether or not it's like too fat phobic or not fat phobic or good representation or bad representation? I don't know. So that one is also being given away. And then I gave away 2 books before the month even ended. I was just sitting and looking at Eliza and Her Monsters, and I realized that I like have nothing against the book. I didn't even give it a shot. But I knew an actual teenager who I was certain would love the book, and I was like, I'm pretty sure I'll enjoy it, but I don't think I'll love it. And so I will just get it from the library whenever I decide to finally read it. But I wanted to give it to this teenager who I thought would love it, and I gave it to her a couple weeks ago, and she's already read it and said it's like literally her favorite book she's read so far this year. I feel no qualms about having given it to her. And then when I saw her, I also, as the end of the month was coming up and I knew I was going to have to get rid of more books so I could unwrap what I needed to, so I can pre-order the book I want to pre-order, I decided to get rid of my advanced reader copy of A Shadow Bright and Burning. I think I might still pick up like a finished copy of it from the library, but I was again pretty sure that I would not love it so much that I'd want to keep the arc of it. It was not like a signed arc or anything, and I gave it to this teenager because I was like, she will probably enjoy this because she is a teenager, and it was an arc, so it's not like I could like sell it or whatever anyway, so I had to give it away. So I gave it to a real live teenager. Let's catch up to tearing these. So I tore one off for A List of Cages. This one's being torn off for Shadow Shaper / Gilead. This one is being torn off for The Art of Waiting. Then I have Fall for Anything, Go Figure, Eliza and Her Monsters, and A Shadow Bright and Burning by Jessica Cluess. And then I have one more of these on my shelf. So I scrounged and I decided to get rid of In the Afterlight. Not because I read it and hated it, not because I DNF'd it, but because I figured if I really want to keep this book, I'll probably want a copy with a dust jacket. I can afford to buy a copy with a dust jacket. And so I'm just going to get rid of it, get it from the library, and then if I really want it, I can buy another copy. So that was the decision that I made so I could rip off what I needed to and unwrap the 2 books I need to read before I can pre-order the book I want to get. Now, typically, in a given month, I unwrap 4 books, and these would be 2 of those books. But I decided to do something a little different this month, and it was because I was getting rid of all of those books, and I was looking at the pile that I had left, and I was like, you know, I'm still behind in books that I've already unwrapped. My reading has slowed significantly. I have a bunch of stuff I have to read for various reasons. I'm in 3 book clubs. So I decided that for this month only, I'm only going to unwrap these 2 books, but then my rule for February is if I have not read at least 50 pages, like of the books I've already unwrapped, and I still have, and I still haven't read, I must read at least 50 pages of them in order to keep them by the end of the month. Let's see what these are. I know what one of them is, and I'm not sure what the other one is, so let's see. They're both paperbacks, which hopefully is good. Okay, this is the one I know. So I remembered having bought this one. I'm pretty excited to read it, especially because my younger sister is staying with me right now. I offered her a cameo and she said no. But anyway, Jane Eyre is her favorite character, and I know that Jane Eyre is like contemporaneous with this book, but that the main character really loves and admires Jane Eyre or the book or something like that. But it's like been described to me as like vaguely Jane Eyre-ish, but with murder. So yeah, and I know that Joss from Scribbles Reads loves this book, and I believe that Maddie from My Name is Maddie Inez also really enjoyed this book, so I'm excited to get to this. And then, this is the one I don't know what it is. Oh, I do remember buying this. This is an interesting story. So this is This Savage Song by Victoria Schwab. I'm not sure if I actually like Victoria Schwab's writing, so we'll see. But I own this and the sequel, which is actually in my sequel stack up there. So if I read this one, I can go straight into the sequel if I want to, and if I read both of them, I will honestly probably end up giving them away, because I think that books should be shared unless they're my favorites and then I keep them forever, but I still lend them out to people, so they're basically still shared. Anyway, so those are all of the books I'm going to try to tackle. Let me pick these up so you can see them. So these are the two books that I have to either finish or definitively DNF and get rid of before I can pre-order The Case for Jamie, which I want to pre-order this month so I can get like it signed and all the like pre-order stuff because it comes out in March. Although I now have a backup plan because one of my friends is going to a signing in early March, so if I don't finish these in time, then I need to finish them by the signing so she can get me a signed copy. And then the books that I need to read at least 50 pages of in order to keep them are Too Like the Lightning, which is not in my stack because I forgot it, Under the Banner of Heaven, The Wretched of the Earth, and The Varieties of Scientific Experience. So like a really fat sci-fi book, and then 3 nonfiction books. So we will see how much progress I make on all of these, but that is basically what my February reading is going to be like, plus a couple books that I have for book clubs and other things. Anyway, if you want to follow along on my progress, you can always check my Goodreads. I am obsessed with Goodreads, and I tend to keep it very well updated. I know right now it looks like it's wild because I have like 8 books that I'm currently reading. Some of them I haven't picked up in 2 weeks, but I am technically in the middle of them, and I do intend to finish them at some point. So one of them I haven't picked up in a month, but I'm trying to shame myself into picking it up again. Anyway, yeah, so if you ever want to like check up on progress, you can look at my Goodreads, or you can tweet me and be like, hey Caitlin, have you gotten to this one yet? If you have a favorite of the ones that I have held up right here, that I'm holding up to you now, and you want me to start that first, like let me know on Twitter, and I will see you guys for sure in March, although I'm about to film another video, so hopefully I'll see you earlier than that. My computer has been fritzing on the fritz, and I had to send it in to get fixed, and it is finally supposed to come back to me tomorrow. So hopefully everything will be fixed and it will be much less annoying / difficult to do anything ever on my computer when it comes back. Anyway, I will talk to you guys all later, and thank you so much for watching. Bye!